Hi everybody, this is Andrew Lawrence from Lawrence Psychological Services. Today I want to talk to you guys about a question that I often get in my practice. So I do a lot of couples therapy and people often ask me this question. So why did my partner cheat on me? Or why was my partner unfaithful in our relationship? Now, there's no simple answer to this question. However, I came across a great article that kind of summarizes why people cheat in very broad terms. And I think this could be very helpful for people out there in answering this question and understanding why they do the things they do. So, if you look at surveys done around the world, most of them will tell you that people still consider cheating to be amoral or the wrong thing to do. However, if you look at a website like Ashley Madison, it seems that what people say is not the same as what they do. So for those of you who don't know what Ashley Madison is, it is a website for people looking to have an affair. So a dating website of sorts. So if you're looking to have an affair, you simply sign up anonymously and you're going to be in touch with a community of people that's looking to have an affair. So as the Ashley Madison slogan says, life is short, have an affair. So this is the shocking fact for me when it comes to Ashley Madison. Not only is it established in 26 countries, but it generates over $90 million annually. Now, this stats I got in 2016, so I'm not even up to date with the current amount that it generates. But in 2016, $90 million. And what this tells us is despite society's amoral view on cheating, it seems that a lot of us are engaging in unfaithful behavior. So let's look at this article by Dr. Kelly Campbell. She did a lot of research and analyzed all the stats when it comes to this question of why do people cheat. So she lists three main reasons why people cheat: individual reasons, in other words, individual characteristics; relationship issues, what's happening within the relationship; and situational reasons, the situation that people often find themselves and compromises them to engage in cheating. So let's look at individual reasons. Dr. Kelly breaks it down into three sub-reasons: gender, personality, and morality. So unfortunately, guys, statistics still shows us that the majority of culprits that cheat are still men. Now, just as a disclaimer, I don't want anybody to write me and say that Henry Lawrence or Dr. Campbell says because I'm a man, I'm going to cheat. That's not what we're trying to say here. What we are saying is statistically, men are more susceptible to cheating. So, of course, when it comes to men, Dr. Campbell explains that men are more susceptible to cheating because of their heightened sex drive. And here we're talking about testosterone, of course. So just as an example or proof of this, of course, the artificial version of testosterone is steroids. And doctors often would prescribe steroids for various medical reasons to their patients. And female patients report a heightened sex drive. They will say, well, since I've been on this medication, I'm feeling a little bit more frisky. And that is because of the steroids, aka testosterone. So it is important to recognize that testosterone causes a higher sex drive. That is, of course, not an excuse why men should be cheating, but it does make men more vulnerable or susceptible to being unfaithful. Right, let's talk about the second reason that Dr. Campbell lists, and this is, of course, personality. So there's various personality types out there, but if we look at personality on a continuum or a spectrum, on the one side we have people that are very self-motivated or self-interest, The extreme level of that would, of course, be somebody that has a narcissistic personality. And then, of course, on the other side, we have people that are conscientious, that has a high level of conscience. Now, what does this mean when it comes to cheating? So, for example, somebody that is leaning towards the more self-motivated side, they have self-interests. So if they find themselves in a situation where there is potential for cheating, they will simply engage in the act without considering their partner. Somebody that falls on the conscientious side of the scale, once they're in a situation where they can potentially cheat, their conscience would stop them from doing that because their consideration for their partner would stop them. In other words, if I do this, it would hurt my partner, it would mess up our relationship, it could be the end of our relationship, and I don't want to hurt my partner in that way. So the third individual reason that Dr. Campbell talks about is morality. Well, she actually talks about religiosity, but for me, I'd rather label it as morality. I think, we've seen in the news and in the media often prominent religious figures engaging in amoral behavior. So that doesn't mean that if you're religious, for me, it doesn't mean that if you're religious, it will stop you from engaging in cheating. However, I think morality or a rigid set of values is the aspect that would keep one from engaging in unfaithful behavior. In other words, if you have a strong sense of morality and if one of your values in your rigid set of values is that you're not a cheater or you don't cheat on your partner, that would prevent you from engaging in behavior like that. Of course, for people who have a low sense of morality, or if their set of values are very flexible, they would consider being unfaithful. So the second reason Dr. Campbell talks about is relationship and specifically levels of satisfaction within the relationship. So if you are very satisfied with your relationship, chances are less that you would be unfaithful. But if you are very unsatisfied with your relationship, in other words, there's some inadequacies in the relationship or needs that's not being met, chances are very likely that you would consider cheating on your partner. So there's dozens or probably hundreds of reasons why people would be unsatisfied with their relationship. Let's look at just a few basic ones that I often get in my practice. I guess the number one reason why people are unsatisfied is usually unmet sexual needs. Now, I'm based in South Africa and we are still considered a very conservative society. So I often find couples not talking about this topic of sex. Even despite the fact that some of them have gone for premarital counseling, they've never engaged in this topic of sex. And what you would find is a few years into the relationship or the marriage, they find out that the one partner is unsatisfied with his or her sex life. Another reason, of course, is lack of intimacy. So intimacy doesn't necessarily mean just the sexuality or the sexual side of a person. We're talking here about communication, closeness, romance, things like that. Another reason, of course, is isolation. Often a partner would be, let's say, for example, be very ambitious, focus only on their work, and leaves the other partner feeling isolated. This also ties into something called abandonment. For example, a mother with a newborn baby will focus a lot on the child and start to abandon her husband. So the husband feels abandoned, doesn't feel part of the family. Another reason, of course, is fighting. For me, fighting is often good in a new relationship because that is how couples set boundaries for the relationship. But sometimes fighting cannot be constructive, or there's no resolution in the fighting between the couple, and they simply continue fighting and fighting and fighting. Now, for those of you who are interested, I have an article on fighting or the drama triangle on my blog, and I will put the address to my website in the comment section of this video. Right, the third reason that Dr. Campbell talks about is situational, and I've broken it down into 3 sub-reasons: environmental, nature of the moment, and proximity. And I want to use a few examples to explain these 3 sub-reasons. So most of our time, or our waking time, is spent at work. And so the work environment is very important when it comes to situational reasons for cheating. So I think by now it's probably a cliche where the boss and the secretary has an affair. But have you ever asked yourself why? The reason, of course, being is that the boss spends so much time with the secretary and they start sharing their lives. So very important when we look at work environment here as well. I often find in my practice as well that a lot of the times if a partner in a relationship has an affair, it often occurred in the work environment. Also here we obviously look at gender balance. For example, if you're a guy and the rest of your team consists of women, that's an imbalance. And of course, vice versa. If you're a lady and most of the people in your team are guys, once again, that's an imbalance. In the moment. So for example, something like skinny dipping. Let's say, for example, there's a couple, they're going camping with friends, they have a few drinks. The lady decides that she's tired, she's going to bed. And the guy says, no, I'm not tired, I'm going to continue partying with my friends. And then at one moment, one person suggests, let's go skinny dipping. Now, you're going to be in close proximity to naked ladies, your wife's in the tent sleeping. That is a potential recipe for being unfaithful. So we have to be aware of what's happening in the moment. This couple that I'm describing here could be very happy in their relationship, but something like this in the moment could cause havoc in their relationship if this moment leads to cheating. Another example of in the moment is, let's call this guy in the photo Jake. Jake has had a huge fight with his girlfriend and he invites one of his female friends over to talk about it. They have a couple of drinks and one thing leads to another. So once again, recognizing what's happening in the moment is very, very important. Proximity. Proximity is also an important issue. As you can see, I've listed the first 2 scenarios that I spoke about here as well. Physical proximity, skinny dipping, places us in very close physical proximity to someone. But also there's emotional proximity. Jake inviting his female friend over and discussing his relationship with her causes emotional proximity. Then of course also even your career. For example, I'm a therapist. I often have females in my practice consoling in me, and I have to be very careful about how I react in that scenario, because I've got a vulnerable client in front of me and that does give me some power, and I have to be very careful as to how I react in that moment. Another example, of course, is this photo that shows a pastor consoling one of his parishioners. Same scenario as being a therapist. And then, of course, even something like being a masseuse. that puts you in physical close proximity to your clients, and we have to be very aware of the proximity that we have to others. Okay, so we've listed, or Dr. Campbell has listed, very broad reasons, but for me it's also very important that we look at this as a complex system. In other words, all these reasons or characteristics are interactive with one another. So for example, a young guy has a high level of testosterone. He fights with his girlfriend all the time. That's of course relationship issues. Then he goes to a nightclub where there's other young attractive females and he has sex with one of them. So that's a situational issue. So here we have gender and potentially personality, relationship issues and situational issues all engaging with one another to cause infidelity. Sometimes it's often just very simple as well. Sometimes it's something just like situational. We've used the example of skinny dipping. The couple is very happy, but because the guy went skinny dipping, that placed him in close proximity to another, let's say, naked lady, and infidelity happened. Another example, of course, and there's many examples that we can use here, but let's say, for example, let's use the example of Susan and Peter. So Susan is team leader in her work environment, but her team only consists of men. Let's say her husband Peter is very ambitious and doesn't really pay a lot of attention to their marriage. So now we have work environment and we have relationship issues. And then the one night Peter is away on work and Susan has struck up a conversation with one of her male colleagues, invites him over for a few drinks. One thing leads to another and they have sex. So as you can see, multiple reasons at play at the same time causing infidelity. So the question, of course, is what can I do to prevent my partner from cheating? Now, the reality is that there's nothing that you can do to prevent your partner from cheating. And I often tell this to my clients in my practice as well. If your partner is going to cheat or wants to cheat, they're going to do that. However, there's several things that you can do to foster a more healthier and secure relationship. And this can serve as a buffer or preventative measure for infidelity creeping into the relationship. And of course, the three things I want to discuss here is setting boundaries, fostering trust, and honest and open communication. So the first thing that we can do is to start setting boundaries. Now, couples often do not discuss the concept of cheating with one another. So more than often I will have a couple in my practice where the man struck up a friendship with a female colleague. They started sharing very private information with one another. The wife finds out about it and goes absolutely ballistic. And the husband is left standing there very confused as to what he did wrong. Now, this is a prime example of where they never discussed what is cheating. Cheating for one person might be engaging in sex, for another person it might be kissing, and for another person it might be simply sharing your life with someone else outside of the relationship. So it's very, very important for couples to know exactly what their concept of cheating is so that they can set the boundaries, so that the individual can know that once I've crossed this line, my partner would consider this to be cheating. The second concept I want to talk about here is trust. Now, of course, the opposite of trust is jealousy and paranoia. And so often people want to control their partner, control where they go, what they do, who they talk to, who they see. And that is actually that is the person's attempt to control their partner and prevent them from cheating. But it will actually have the opposite effect. It will eventually drive a wedge between those two, and you will push your partner away, and that partner will then eventually engage in unfaithful behavior. So I often find in therapy or in my practice that if the one partner accuses the other one of cheating, if that person has jealousy issues or trust issues and they continue accusing their partner of cheating, that person will eventually engage in unfaithful behavior because they keep on being labeled as a cheater. So it is a far better strategy in a relationship to simply trust that person instead of trying to control that person. Now, for people who are jealous or paranoid, this is a very unnatural thing to do. But in any relationship, we are taking a chance. Whenever we engage in a relationship, we take a chance on that person. And therefore, if we let that person know that we trust them, the chances are very good that they would reciprocate with trusting us and loving us, and that bolsters the sense of security in a relationship. So the third concept I want to talk about is honest and open communication. Of course, honest and open communication is the cornerstone of any healthy relationship. But let's quickly look at how an affair usually starts. So what would happen is one of the partners in the relationship would start developing a crush or an interest in someone outside of the relationship. Then that person would test the waters and find out that their crush is also interested in them. And so the relationship grows and eventually ends up in a full-blown affair. So it would be very unrealistic for us to say that we're going to go through life not ever having a crush or an interest in somebody outside of the relationship. But something that I usually ask of my couples in therapy is to nip this thing in the bud before it has a chance to grow. So what do I mean by that? And that is something that couples find very difficult to do, but once they're able to do it, it's a great countermeasure to infidelity. So this is what I mean. Let's say, for example, one of the partners in a relationship develops a crush on somebody, of course, outside of the relationship. And that person then confesses their crush to their partner. So this can go one of two ways. So the partner can either become very angry, very hostile, and be very resentful towards their partner. And of course, the message that the partner receives is, I'll never ever do this again because I don't want to go through this punitive exercise again. The other option, of course, is that the partner confesses the crush and that his or her partner receives it for what it is and that they discuss this crush. So what does this do? Once you confess a crush to someone, it immediately takes the energy out of that relationship. The second thing it does is it can reflect inadequacies in their relationship, and they can work on that inadequacies. In other words, growing and bolstering that relationship. And as the relationship becomes stronger, it becomes less susceptible to infidelity. So if a couple can develop this ability to confess their crush or their interest in their partner, and they can discuss it within the relationship becomes stronger and there's less potential for cheating within the relationship. Now, this is something that couples often find very difficult to do because we do not want to admit to ourselves that our partner actually likes somebody else or has romantic interests in somebody else. But as I said, as we go through life, it's highly unlikely that we will not develop a crush on somebody. But if we apply this strategy that I've just discussed, it can be a great countermeasure to cheating. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you found it interesting and helpful. For the full article that I wrote on my blog, please go and visit my website. You will also find a link there to the article that Dr. Campbell wrote. You can also be on the lookout. I will be posting videos in the future on various other topics in my channel. And as always, I'm wishing everybody out there health, happiness, and well-being.